think one of the big talking, in fact, I think it's the biggest talking point of this England team is the midfield. It seems to be a bit of a conundrum, you could say, due to England's lack, or certainly perceived lack, of midfielders who are comfortable doing some defensive work, or naturally that's where they go. And, Southgate has been criticised and accused of being too conservative generally, but I think specifically that where the midfield is concerned, that's where it comes from. Jude Bellingham is obviously a huge part of this England team and is playing in that advanced role, number 10 role, as many people would call it. He's been playing further up the pitch for Real Madrid. Declan Rice is going to be at the base of that midfield, and that's where he prefers to be. I know at Arsenal he's been used as a more kind of box-to-box player, a number 8, as people sometimes say nowadays. But he himself says he prefers to be at the base, and that's where he plays with England. Now, back in November, we saw Rice and Phillips playing as they did in the Euros in the centre of midfield together. I know that was sometimes a 3-4-3, but it was those two behind Bellingham in the friendly. Certainly against Scotland, that's how they lined up as well. Well, Phillips, his form has been terrible, as we know, and it now looks like he's been injured for the rest of the season. So if there was any tiny, teensy flicker of hope, which I don't think there was for Phillips, he's now very much gone. So if we are going to assume that Southgate is going to play with Rice and another at the base of midfield. We saw him against Brazil. He tried Conor Gallagher there. Against Belgium, Kobbie Mainoo, who came into the team. It does seem like that's what it's going to be. Who do you think the best replacement would be in that specific system? It may not be the system that you would like. You'd maybe want to see Foden in there with Bellingham. I know you've said that before. But if we are assuming that he's going to have another holder with Rice in there, who do you think is the best player for that job?
So it's a really difficult question to answer. And I think I will go around the houses trying to answer it, but you have to bear with me. So I would look at the most recently relevant competitive games and for England. And to do that, you do have to go back a bit. Now, you don't have to go back too far for the England game against Italy in qualifying when they beat them 3-1 at Wembley.
That's right.
And then for that game, it was Rice and Phillips. It was when Phillips wasn't quite a busted flush, because it was back in October.
But he hadn't moved to West Ham by then.
Yeah.
So he was still...
He was around it. Guardiola wasn't using him. He hadn't done anything wrong.
Yeah.
He just wasn't being picked. And so he played. He got subbed off in that game, though, for people who don't remember. Interestingly enough, Mark Gahey came on in that game as well.
He did, yeah.
And England obviously won the game. And then if you go back a bit further, England played France. They lost out 2-1 in the World Cup, as we all know. At that point, England was still playing 4-3-3. So they were playing with Bellingham on the left of the three, Rice in the middle. And
then Henderson
It was Henderson on the right. So to me, like, Declan Rice has evolved quite a lot as a player since then. And he plays really nominally on the left of a 3 for Arsenal. But as you say, he's
played a 6 and an 8.
Yeah, but he does everything.
Yeah.
And he can do everything.
Yeah.
And so why am I saying all this? Well, I sometimes wonder if it's a bit of a red herring when people talk about England at the moment playing 2 holding midfield players and that being too conservative, because Rice isn't actually that conservative. He can play a role like that, and I think he's one of those players, he's so good, genuinely so good, that if England were playing someone good in the Euros in a knockout game, and Southgate said to him, you just need to sit for a bit, he would do it. But he also offers a lot more going forward. And before he signed for Arsenal, a lot of the chat I heard was that he can do an awful lot more than he's doing, and he's got a high ceiling, and he's going to improve, which he has done. So that's all the background to what I'm about to say, which is that what that means is, unless England flip their formation, which I don't think they will, they need someone who can perform the role of Calvin Phillips of about 3 years ago.
Yep.
And there's no real obvious candidate to do that. I think my personal view is that Kobbie Mainoo is being promoted very, very quickly. I think it's easy to stand out as a calm head on shoulders at Man United at the moment, as I mentioned on the show yesterday. You guys didn't necessarily agree, but that's fair enough. It's a lot to ask of him, although he has looked pretty good when he's been given his debut for England. I certainly concede that. There's been talk of, like, because we're in the week we're in and they've just beaten Man United 4-0, there's been talk of like Adam Wharton. He's too early. He's playing the Championship 4 months ago. It's a very, very early thing to be talking about.
But that's how good he is, though.
But he is good. We don't know how good he's going to be. We don't know that yet. And I think it's fine to be okay about that. It's fine to just calm down about that. I wonder whether there's a temptation for Southgate to revert to type and be unable to resist to play Henderson in there. And I will be disappointed with that.
Here are some other names who have tried to play in that. I say some other names, one other name.
Okay, good.
Because we are,
right. Michael Carrick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because we have mentioned Kobe Mainoo and briefly mentioned Conor Gallagher. Right?
It's not Gallagher's game, though.
No, exactly. So I think and I'm sure he won't mind me quoting him, even though it was a private conversation. But I know Henry Winter's a big fan of Trent Alexander-Arnold playing in that role. And I
Henry
think
Winter's out of a job.
that's not the point I'm making here.
Right.
It's a man who loves his country, and he's seen him, and God bless him for that. And he's seen him play a lot.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's ridiculous to ask Trent Alexander-Arnold to sit in there. It would mean
I think it just doesn't. You're just too exposed, and you limit what Rice can do.
But Rice, I mean, yeah, Rice does like playing that. I know what you mean. You want a Jorginho type in there, or a Thomas Partey, so Rice can go on. England don't have. I think
the issue. This is definitely worth talking about, of course, because this is the biggest problem of many problems that Southgate actually has going into this summer, and I think it's not actually been talked about that much. How many problems he's got to solve around selection, the turnover of form in players for England across this season has actually been quite stark, and it's not just form, by the way, it's also injuries. Now, I suspect that we put to one side the injuries thing because we assume that every big European nation can have this problem, and it's a kick on from when the World Cup was during the season in Qatar, and the amount of players we're seeing missing through injury is crazy. Now, we've talked about that till the cows come home, but if you put in the combination of injury issues and turnover of form at England, I would argue that this is the toughest squad naming he's had to do.
Interesting. Because
look at the squad at the moment in the most recent game, right? Maddison's in there. He ain't going to go. Maddison can't be picked. He's been dreadful since he come back from injuries. He's contributed absolutely nothing for months. Grealish, nowhere. Phillips, nowhere.
Yeah, I disagree with you on Grealish.
But he is. I mean, relatively speaking, Marcus, from where he was at the last tournament, he's nowhere.
But I take your point that there are question marks.
He's got loads of questions to answer, Southgate.
But I think this one is the most difficult. But when
injured, Chilwell injured.
Yeah,
there's so many.
You're right to point this out.
Now Maguire.
But England still do have a good squad and a squad that can challenge for this trophy.
Maybe he pushes Stones in there then.
He's not. I don't think he's going to do that. I think that. I think Kobe Mainoo is an excellent option to have in there, and I think against Belgium. Well, even Brazil when he came on, but I think against Belgium you saw that, and I think with the stability that Rice gives, Mainoo won't believe his luck.
Let me give you another, and that's actually.
Well, he won't believe his luck because he'll think to himself, "Hang on a minute, I've got actual teammates and a strategy and people who enjoy playing for this."
And this is also how legends are forged. You take chances on young players and they don't look back. That's how it goes. Circumstances. That's what football's all about sometimes.
Indeed, yes.
Let me give you another solution though, very quickly before you move on.
Right.
I was pilloried for this, and I understand why.
Yeah, you get pilloried a lot, to be fair.
Yeah, it's all part of being me, and that's just at home. What about this? What people don't want to do this because they think it shackles him, but you could move Bellingham back there. And it frees you up to have another option in the forward 3 or 4 positions.
You do. I think that the other...
Bellingham can control games at the top level, by the way.
Yeah. I think the other way of playing it is you play Rice in that sort of pivot role and then you have 2 number 8s.
But he's not going to do that, is he?
Well, he had to. He did in Qatar, so it's, reasonably...
But the way I see Southgate's kind of evolution... So him and Holland, their evolution of their tactics, they seem to just go in one direction.
Yes, but that doesn't mean to say that it's a given that they won't. I take the point, which is why when we framed this, I said it's likely. So who do you think is going to slot in there? Oh,
if you play Rice as a lone pivot and play Foden and Bellingham in front of him, I'll be all over that. I just don't think he'll do it.
Well, okay. It is a huge conundrum, as I say, that Southgate needs to answer. I suspect that he will go for Mainoo, and I hope he does, because I think Mainoo's a lovely player who gives England something different, even though the grand total of the minutes that Mainoo's played for England is quite low. You could say the same about Manchester United.
I just think you're going back to the Trent Alexander-Arnold thing. I mean, how many games has he played in the middle of midfield for Liverpool this season?
Well, Alexander-Arnold's is a different thing, but I think he could play there though for England.
But here's what I'm trying to get at: we go for all these different options, and the listeners can hear us just spitballing all these different options. If we accept that none of them is perfect, then we have to go for the most likely to give us success,
which is Mainoo. I think Mainoo.
I think it's Bellingham.
Well, okay. So you reshape the midfield, which I don't think is a stupid point. But in terms of those, as you say, those power rankings of England players, the most important player for England at the moment is Declan Rice.
Yeah.
Because if he's injured or something happens to him, who else are you going to put in there? Some would have Harry Kane, understandably, but at least Ivan Toney or Ollie Watkins are forwards, which is why when England are made favourites, I think to myself, I think France have got more balance in there, and I think. You could argue Portugal do. I mean, for crying out loud, if England came up against Spain and we're talking about the midfield, Rodri pulling the strings, I really don't like the sound of that. So anyway, it is something that Southgate and Holland will need to solve and they'll need a plan to come up with. And that, honestly, I think could make or break England's tournament. Now, before we move on to the second half, we did discuss this idea that England are favourites for the Euros. Jose Mourinho has named France, Portugal and England as his three favourites, but he said he can't really look past Portugal. He said England are just missing that little bit, which is kind of what we've been discussing there.
He can't look past Portugal because he's A, Portuguese, and B, wants to manage Portugal at some point.
Well, he nearly managed England at one point.
I heard that back in the day.
Do you not remember this, though?
But when Mourinho... I do remember it. It was 2007.
Yeah.
I do remember it, Marcus, but the reason I dismissed it at the time is because it was the FA just going, well, he's really good. We'll just link ourselves with him.
Yeah, you can't blame the FA for that, though, can you?
Yeah, they went after Mourinho after being bruised by Steve McLaren's experience. Thought, who's the opposite to Steve McLaren?
Yeah.
Oh, this guy actually does speak different languages. But presumably, when it comes to Portugal being favourites, your loyalties are split anyway because of Big Palinha.
João, yeah.
Doing his thing.
I don't think my loyalties will be split.
But you'd like to see him do well.
I mean, if he said to me, would you like to see us beat England, and then said, I'll slide tackle if you say no, then I might have to kind of whimper out of that one.
Or if he just about does enough at the tournament, just to get him over the line to that move to Bayern Munich.
I don't know.
But I mean, I just felt like this is the same way that, Spurs and Newcastle before that back in the day just used to brief the press, throw their names into the hat to be linked with some player they're never going to get, just to make their fans happy that they're trying.
Yeah, true.
It's exactly like that with England fans.
It is. All right, coming up in the second half, we've got your questions and the take thermometer. Welcome back to Lions Watch, everybody. Right, it's now time for the take thermometer.
Yeah, every week on Lions Watch, we sense check the latest big opinions on the patented take thermometer. I say patented. Is it because no one else has thought of a brilliant idea, or just because no one thinks it's any good? Fill in the blanks yourself. Leave us out of it. It's our patented take thermometer. It's something a pundit, player, or coach has said regarding the England men's team, spot on or a load of bollocks. Now, I'll remind you of the scale. Lemon and herb for the most tepid take, which Fabio Capello received from us last week, which will go up on his shelf along all his other trophies, I expect. Mild, medium, hot, and flare up the arse. They're all pretty self-explanatory. This week's take, Marcus, I want to get your take on, is the headline is as follows. Michael Owen claims Chelsea star should start for England at Euro 2024 ahead of Arsenal rival.
Ooh.
Former England striker Michael Owen said last week, I would now start Cole Palmer over Bukayo Saka. I don't think you can ignore Palmer's form and quality any longer. I had him in my squad a few months ago, but now he's one of the best players in the Premier League. I would play him on the right. I'd have Foden and him. One on the right, one central, then have Rice as a lone number 6 and Bellingham and Foden as 8/10s and Cole on the right. But at periods of the game, I'll swap them around. He goes into a lot of fucking detail. Basically, he's boring on again, as is his wont. And when he says, I had him in my squad a few months ago, you're not the England manager, Michael.
No.
You probably never will be. Anyway, the salient point is this.
Probably.
Michael wants to start Cole Palmer over Bukayo Saka. Over to you.
Lemon and herb.
Straight away.
Yeah.
Because Saka's been brilliant. He's having an amazing season.
Back-to-back England Player of the Year.
Yeah.
Let's bin him off, shall we?
Play him at holding midfield. Now you're talking. There's a space there for you.
Well, he was played at left wing back not that long ago.
Sven would do it.
Do it for Sven. It's poor. Would you agree?
Well, I think it's a lemon and herb. I think it falls into lemon and herb again for 2 weeks running, chiefly because of the justification he uses.
Yes.
If he had just said, I think Cole Palmer should start for England, and some particularly enterprising journalist said, who are you playing him in front instead of, like you always say to me, I'd say, Not my problem. Work it out. You're the manager. It's not as bad a take because Cole Palmer's been brilliant.
Yeah, because some people might say play him maybe on the left side of the front three and then Foden in the midfield and have a midfield like you would like to see, Luke. And that kind of thing. Okay, you're desperate for this guy to start, basically, but not above Bukayo Saka.
What Michael Owen is
Saka's
doing...
one of the first names on the starting 11.
Exactly. So what he's doing is he's undermining himself by making a stupid suggestion.
Yeah.
Around two great players.
Yes.
And sometimes, as we know, international football can be littered with players who are brilliant, but just not better than the players ahead of them.
No, exactly.
And at this stage, that's the case. I mean, he's not. What he has to do, given Saka's record at England, given the season Arsenal are having, and Saka's contribution to it as well, he needs to give Southgate a really big reason to pick him, and he has to be accepting of that. Yeah. It's the same way that Andy Cole got 13 caps for England, no more, and scored, one goal or something, maybe a few more. Robbie Fowler hardly played for England. Les Ferdinand hardly played for England. Chris Sutton hardly played for England. For people who are too young to remember this, throughout the 90s...
Matt Letizia hardly played for England.
Not so much. We have to understand that they were brilliant Premier League players, but England had amazing other players as well. And Michael Owen was on the scene then too. So I think Palmer does realistically probably have to go to the tournament.
Because of 26.
But I don't think he starts.
Yeah, okay. I think Palmer is one of those players who will benefit from the extended squad. Although other people would have him in there, even if it was just 23.
But because you have to understand, and I touched on this a second ago, other attacking players who've been a part of it are by no means at all shoo-ins for this squad. And I would say Grealish, Rashford, Gallagher. Who else?
Bowen is not a shoo-in. Although a lot of people, as I say, a lot of people would say, no, he's got to go. Fine, but we're talking about absolute nailed-on shoo-ins, as you say.
Gordon has been in there as well.
Yep. I mean, think about it. Raheem Sterling is nowhere near. And people say, well, that's because he's not fine. But what he did for England, was undeniable. So, yes.
Big decision to make. I would have Palmer in my 26, and we'll probably do our 26 at some point.
I would have thought so. But, it's ruthless, this. It really is. You've got to whittle it down.
So, for 2 weeks in a row, it's a lemon and herb, courtesy of Fabio Capello and Michael Owen.
I wonder if we're going to get a flare up the arse.
At some point, we should.
Yeah, not literally. We definitely do that. That's the grand finale of Live Watch.
But the problem is that I realised this when I thought about that.
Nominate whose arse.
I was thinking, that's definitely mine. I was thinking, are we ever going to get one? And I just thought, so many people who do punditry on football are so fucking thick. I just don't think there's much chance.
Or are we cherry picking them?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we are.
No, I know what you mean. Right, everybody, it's now time for some listener questions. Remember, you can send us England questions at any time. Email us show@footballramble.com or tweet us on X at
any time. Don't come to my house like 3 a.m. You said at any time.
Yeah, any time. It's open. The channels are open for you, everybody. Luke, you've got the first one.
Have I got the first one? Oh, good. Okay, right. It says to me, you're reading the first one. Oh, no, it's me. Yeah, it's me. Sorry, everyone. Tom Clark. Sorry to you, Tom, for the confusion, making it sound like neither of us wanted to read your question. I know it's always nice to have a Marcus in there.
Correct.
But has Rashford done enough to get on the plane?
No, he hasn't.
Right.
I think he could be one of those ones where some people might be quite shocked that he doesn't go, because Southgate shows loyalty to players. Obviously, Rashford has been in all the Southgate squads. Blimey, you'd be hard. You'd be hard tasked to find a squad where he hasn't got in there out with injury. So he's often played, not started that much, although he started the odd game at tournaments for Southgate and co against Wales. I think he started in the last World Cup, but I just don't think he has done enough. I don't think it's a question of but he's not been scoring goals, because he's produced some great moments this season.
He's got 7 Premier League goals this season.
But yeah, he's not been scoring goals. But there's something not right there with Rashford.
Totally.
And I one is often concerned for a fellow human being when you see them like that. But his effort, his energy, his qualities have just not been there in the way that they have done before. It's not like he's been putting in effort and he's been doing his doggies and all that kind of stuff. It's just not quite happening on the pitch. And you think, well, at England, maybe that can unlock. You remember that lovely goal he scored against Italy in the aforementioned qualifier.
Sort of the way Welbeck used to get in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I don't see that, and I think that England can't really afford to bring a player where you think, well, we hope he gets up to speed. We hope he shakes off whatever's going on.
No, I agree. And I think you look at the plethora of talent that England have at those kind of positions. I mean, I remember not that long ago, we were debating, you and I, about whether Rashford or Foden would play off the left. I mean, look at the season Foden's had. That's just one example.
Well, the more relevant thing is, Would he have Foden on the left, or would he be more
Bring him in the
inside?
middle,
I think he will be on the left. And then who's the sub or the backup there? Is it Gordon? Is it Grealish?
It can't be Rashford.
Yeah, exactly.
And
think of the season Gordon's had, and even Gordon gave a pretty decent account, not spectacular, but a reasonably decent account, I think, in those friendlies.
Oh, I think he's in much better form.
Yeah.
Much better form. And I think you look at the stuff that Rashford has done this season, try and be a bit positive about him. Around the turn of the year, had a decent run of form, scored a few goals.
And he's still got moments in him.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. But the problem is, that's not really the issue, because everyone knows the quality he's got.
Yeah.
So everyone knows he's a good finisher. Everyone knows he can beat a man. He's got great pace. He can strike the ball well. But he's always going to have that.
Yeah.
The problem is the rest of his all-round game is suffering for reasons that maybe we don't fully understand. It may just be that because Man United are all over the place, but it may well be he's got some personal things as well. It feels to me, which is a damning indictment that you can say about any top player, it just feels like he needs a move, like a fresh start. As a result, I think he's certainly not going to be the first player to have a bad season and miss out on a tournament. But I think that's what's going to happen. And by the way, I don't think he'll be the last to do that either. It's just how it goes.
This from The Real Doug Life
Good
says,
name.
there's normally one wild card in the squad. Who would you like to see given a chance? And a lot of people have been saying this, particularly since we've got 26 players going to the Euros, as everybody else does.
Yeah.
It'd seem unfair if we had more than others. So Cole Palmer was a name that a lot of people have been saying. I feel like you could argue that he'd be a wild card because he's had very few minutes.
Played twice for England.
Yeah, very few minutes at international level. So that could be an argument. I don't want to take a potential answer away from you, Luke, but I feel like a lot of people have been saying him, so maybe it's an obvious one.
Yeah, that is an obvious one. I would probably say my particular choice for wild card would be one of two players, and it would be Anthony Gordon, would be one of them. I don't know if he counts because he's obviously played a bit.
Okay.
Eberechi Eze.
That was going to be my answer.
He's played twice for England. He played against Scotland back in the start of the season.
Yeah.
He's been good this season.
Yeah.
And we're off the back of them smashing Man United, and he looked very difficult to deal with. I just think he's the kind of player that lends itself to a wild card selection. He's very tricky. He's very unpredictable. He's very positive. And I think if I was going to pick all those players we've talked about there, Palmer, Gordon and Eze, what I really like to see in players in modern football is just positivity. The players who just go forward and really try and make something happen. You think of players like, I'll tell you, Jeremy Docker's a good example of this.
Oh, yeah.
Chiesa is a really good example of it for Italy, where he's always just trying to do something.
Yeah.
And what I
back in the day, just to add to that, they would just be hanging out on the touchline and only really come to life when they receive the ball.
And football's so systemic now.
Totally.
So, and I think that, and that's probably the biggest criticism I've got of Grealish, is that I understand he's playing within a massive system, which is the most successful team we've seen in domestic football.
And he was a starter when they won the treble, so he's obviously adapted to that.
Yeah, but now, I don't know, maybe I'm coloured by it, but I remember when I played when I was younger, I was never a pacey wide player, as you well know, but what the every manager I played with used to say to wide forward players, anyone can come back inside and play it square. It's an easy fucking way out.
So he is predictable, I'll give you that.
And that is what Grealish seems to do all the time.
He recycles the ball a lot, I understand.
Too much.
Yeah, but again, in that
Eze doesn't do that. Eze wants to make things happen.
Look, I agree with you. That was going to be my answer. I think Eze is a hugely exciting player. And he's the type of player, again, if England are down, you think, who are you bringing him on? That is the wild card approach, because he's not played that much for England. He plays for a bottom half of the table Premier League side, even though Palace are finishing strongly, but then factually not a top half.
They still technically could finish 10th.
It'd be unlikely, but
so it's out of order by you.
It is. Sorry, Palace fans. But again, you think of the dynamism he has, the pace, the excitement, the skill, the ability to shoot from range and score great goals, and also he is adaptable. He can play in a midfield three, or he can play out wide on one of the wings. I think, I'm not saying I think he should start for England and so on, but the question was about wild card. Our answer is Eze, I think. If
the squad was named and Eze was in there, I'd have a little smile to myself.
Damn right.
I think, fucking good on you, Gareth.
Yeah. You're listening.
Gareth used to play for Crystal Palace as well, of course, didn't he?
And that's the reason.
Why not?
Yeah, Adam Wharton's in there.
Yeah,
Dean Henderson.
Well, Adam Wharton got called up to the under-21s because Mainu got promoted to the full squad. You know, so
I just think for Adam Wharton, it's a bit of a shame for him, because we were talking about him now, and you still had those friendlies against Brazil and Belgium. If it was a month or two ago, a couple of months ago, he may well have got a chance there. But I think it's been a goal.
At the risk of me sounding a bit too dismissive, either earlier today or on the show yesterday, I personally believe, having watched Adam Wharton play, it's just my opinion, he will go to the very, very top. I think he's absolutely brilliant at everything. He's absolutely perfect for that role that he plays. I just think that it's about timing. We're in May, right? He's starting to come into the conversation now in May. He's played a load of games in a row for Palace and they've done well. He's got a new manager. He's had a lease of life. He's made the move in January. I think he'll go to the top. I just think it's one tournament too early for him.
This is how legends are made.
It's how legends are forged. Final question, Marcus. What do you got?
This is from Go Away Tim. Good to hear from him as always. Which English player do you feel should have got many more caps than they did in their time?
Michael Carrick.
I knew you were going to say Carrick.
Well, that's the only answer.
Matt Letizia?
No, I don't think that.
But he was a great player.
He was a really, really talented player,
Yeah.
Right.
Steve Bruce? Could have got one.
Yeah, Bruce.
Could have got one.
Bruce should have got more than 0. He was fucking brilliant. And he was a goal threat. And he was playing for Man United.
Yeah, when they really became...
Well, England didn't play as many games back then, though.
He should have got a
He
cap.
should have played. He should have played.
The only other one I was going to say in the spirit of your kind of Michael Carrick answer, because Carrick still, what did he get, 34 caps, something like that? What it should have been Carrick or one or two others, because actually England, even if you were to take the sort of the basic sort of defensive midfielder, Nicky Butt could have played in there. Basically, you needed someone who had a glancing interest at least in the defensive side of things. So I agree, Carrick probably should have had more. The only one I was going to say who's got 40 odd, I think maybe 42 England caps, is Owen Hargreaves. I think Hargreaves made his debut after he won the Champions League with Bayern. I think he was in a squad before that. He was young. He basically had to win the Champions League to go, look, lads, I'm all right here.
But he had a non-traditional career, went around the houses. And then, so it's like a truncated England career because of that bit at the start. And at the end, it was just he had terrible injuries.
Injuries were a big cause.
He retired pretty early. He had bad knee injuries, couldn't get past them.
Yeah.
He was a kind of player at that time that England fans and the general public at large didn't really respect. He used to get a lot of shit, he played for England.
Well, he was a bit of a utility man.
People didn't know what he did.
Well, he played sort of fullback sometimes, and then I think in the Champions League for Manchester United in the final, I think he played right mid. So he was very versatile.
But Marcus, it was insane. He like people were saying, what does he bring? And he was literally having to say, well, I won the Champions League with Bayern Munich by helping to keep the ball.
Well, indeed. I think in World Cup 2006, especially that game against Portugal, and went all the way to penalties, and he was the only one to score his penalty, if my memory serves me correctly. I think people realised the value that he brought. But by 2006, it would only be a few years later, with the injury started to catch up with him and so on. So I suppose with Go Away Tim, if he'd have said, which English player do you feel should have got more caps, then I think Hargreaves should have got more, because even if it was just 5 more, but I suppose many more caps is the question. So I would...
Bruce, Carrick, Hargreaves.
There you go.
David Nugent.
Nicky Butt.
Nicky Butt, Nicky Butt's probably a bit underrated.
On behalf of Fulham fans, Bobby Zamora.
The only person I've interviewed in football I didn't like.
Me.
Players.
Oh.
Zamora.
Yeah. Why was that?
Just very, very grumpy and rude.
Yeah, he gave quite an interview, an interesting and charismatic, dare I say, interview with the Fulham podcast recently. So
they're probably better interviewers than me.
Sometimes it is down to the interview.
It can be. A bad workman blames his tools, and Bobby Zamora certainly was a tool.
He'd have gone to World Cup 2010 if it wasn't for injury.
Why are we talking about this?
And we could have won the World Cup with Bobby Zamora up front. Is a thought we'll leave you with.
When the ball hits the goal, it's not Beckham or Cole, it's Zamora.
Come on.
Thank you for watching a clip from the Football Ramble podcast. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an upload. A single upload. Don't miss out on the uploads. The uploads are important.